Okay, our talk today is on climate change in the southwest United States. Our speaker, of course, is Gregg Garfin, and he's a professor at the U of A. Now, he was the lead author on the assessment of climate change in the southwest United States. If you want more details about this program, it's a very extensive one, and it can be obtained by going to www.swcarr.arizona.edu. Okay, swcarr.arizona.edu. There were 120 authors on this program. 50 different agencies participated, and research centers and organizations throughout the Southwest. So it's a major study, and I found out just today that it was all volunteers. All these people were actually volunteers, so we can certainly applaud what they were able to accomplish with all volunteers, because that's what we do mostly here too. We don't get a whole lot of money to do what we're doing here. So, okay. And he's going to tell us about why it's getting hotter, why there's going to be water shortages, irrigation changes, energy sources, demands, management and priority. What can we do about it? That's going to be the big theme, I guess, is now what? And and someone asked me earlier, is this going to be redone again? And it's planned that probably in 4 years I'll try to do something similar to find out whether things shaped up the way they thought they were, or whether there's additional things they need to know. So I give you Gregg Garfin.
Thank you. Good morning. Okay, thank you. I'm going to speak about climate change in the southwest United States. My remarks will be based primarily on findings from this book, Assessment of Climate Change in the Southwest United States, which was a so-called technical input offered to the U.S. National Climate Assessment. So I will talk about the assessment, give you some background about who did it, why, when, and so on. I'll talk about observed and projected climate changes, observed and projected impacts, choices that we have for the future to deal with climate change, and I probably don't even have to tell you, Jerry just told you about where to get information, but I'll just mention that back on the table I put the first chapter of the book is a so-called summary for decision makers, and that's free back there, and on the back it'll tell you about various websites that you can go to and get other information. So why did we do this? In 1990, the U.S. Congress passed the U.S. Global Change Research Act, which mandates a report to the President, Congress, and the nation about the state of climate change knowledge and the potential impacts to our country. The upcoming National Climate Assessment, which is currently in review and will be released next March, is only the third since 1990. So I think you can all do the math there. There have been some hiccups along the way. Let's say that a particular administration had to be sued for that national climate assessment. At any rate, who did this? So back in May of 2011, the U.S. Global Change Research Program put out a call for expressions of interest for submitting technical inputs to the National Climate Assessment. And this group, which called itself the Southwest Climate Alliance and consists of participants in the 3 NOAA Regional Integrated Science and Assessment Programs, the Western Water Assessment, which is housed at the University of Colorado, the climate assessment for the Southwest, which is housed here at the University of Arizona, the California-Nevada Applications Program, which is housed at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in San Diego, combined with the Southwest Climate Science Center, which includes some of those same institutions and several others, to submit an expression of interest to produce a comprehensive report for the Southwest. Now, there were many other technical inputs that were submitted to the National Climate Assessment that ranged from reports from various federal labs, like the Pacific Northwest National Lab, where they did an analysis of the combination of land use change, water, and energy. There were other things that were submitted that were simple as an annotated bibliography of studies of environmental change on Native American reservations and so on. But this was the only comprehensive report that was submitted. We did the work. We very quickly convened an prospective authors meeting in August of 2011. And beginning in September of 2011, folks put together a first draft that had to be reviewed. So the first draft was done by the end of December. It was submitted for a peer review. So we had 3 peer reviewers for each chapter, plus a review editor whose job was to make sure that the authors, in fact, responded in an adequate way to those review comments. And then we had a March 1st, 2012 deadline to submit what ended up to be the draft of what was the final book to the National Climate Assessment. So basically, the research covered literature until the end of February 2012. So I just want to take a minute to describe what an assessment is and some of the constraints in contributing to the National Climate Assessment. First of all, we had to primarily use existing information, primarily peer-reviewed literature. An assessment is a document that is policy relevant. It aims to inform policy. It is usually, again, constrained in time, as this one was, and it focuses on a specific issue, in this case, climate change and its ramifications for the Southwest. It's not an advocacy piece, and it doesn't contain policy recommendations. And those were some of the constraints of contributing to the National Climate Assessment. So just to give you a brief run-through of what you'll find if you go to the website, you can download a free PDF of the whole book or any of the individual chapters or any of the images that we use in the book. We've got 3 background chapters, the summary for decision makers, which you can get a hard copy of the back, an overview, which is basically the stuff that I'm telling you now about how it was put together, and this chapter on the changing Southwest. So that's a review of basically the historic demographics and socioeconomic characteristics, land use changes for the region. We had 4 climate chapters, one which describes the average weather and climate of the region, one which describes climate variations and trends, historic and paleoclimate variations and trends, and then 2 chapters that look out into the future using projections from climate models, one of the average climate and one of the climate extremes. We had 10 impacts chapters covering these topics: ecosystems, coasts, water sector, ag and ranching, energy, urban areas, transportation, public health, border communities, and tribal communities. And then a chapter on climate choices, so basically choices for reducing greenhouse gases and choices for adapting to inevitable change. And then 2 research-based chapters, one this moving forward with imperfect information is basically, what are the caveats, what are the limits to the science that we used in the document? And then the final chapter was strategies to deal with those limitations and to try to fill in research gaps for the future. So some suggestions to the scientific community about where to go. As Jerry mentioned, this was, we had 120 contributors from 49 distinct institutions, which included federal agencies, universities, NGOs, private sector, and tribes. And then it was reviewed by 82 people from 55 distinct institutions. And it was a pretty similar group of organizations, not exactly the same organizations, but a similar distribution, which is primarily university and federal agencies and a smattering of the others that I mentioned. So in the next 45 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a snapshot of this 509-page document. We did not include in the document anything about the background science on human-caused global warming, because that is treated separately in one of the 30 chapters of the National Climate Assessment. So our job was to focus on the observed and projected climate changes for our region. But just so you know, some of the assumptions that our authors were taking into account, I will just give you a real brief primer of things from the National Climate Assessment on this topic. So first is the basic mechanism for human-caused global warming, the greenhouse effect, which was confirmed in the mid-1800s by John Tyndall, who's pictured here. And the basic premise is that there's a thin layer of gases in the atmosphere that are radiatively active, which means that they have the property of allowing ultraviolet or shortwave radiation energy from the sun to pass through the atmosphere. About half of that passes through, warms the surface of the Earth, and is re-radiated as infrared or long-wave radiation. And those same gases have the property of trapping long-wave radiation. There are many different greenhouse gases. The poster child is carbon dioxide, and often you'll see these changes in greenhouse gases expressed as carbon dioxide equivalents. Carbon dioxide accounts for about 2/3 of this effect, and there are other gases like methane, which is more effective at trapping long-wave radiation but has a shorter lifespan in the atmosphere. There are nitrous oxides, water vapor, which is extremely effective but has a very short lifespan in the atmosphere, and chlorofluorocarbons. I probably left out a few others. And basically, what we've observed is an imbalance in the Earth's radiation budget. So the greenhouse effect on its own is a good thing. It keeps the Earth at habitable temperature. But we've, through burning fossil fuels and through land use changes, we've increased the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere substantially. We have many different kinds of records of past history of greenhouse gases and also past temperatures. This graph shows the last 800,000 years or so, again expressing this in terms of carbon dioxide from levels trapped in ice cores, and then you can see that there's been a very rapid increase in greenhouse gases since the Industrial Revolution, and then these are showing two different scenarios of future greenhouse gas amounts expressed in parts per million volume. We also have thermometer records of temperatures from over the land and ocean, combined land and ocean thermometer records, shown here from the 1880s to 2010 or so. And a couple of things about this graph. One is that there's variability, and the Earth's climate system is inherently variable. So there are individual years that are quite hot, there are others that are cold, there are year-to-year variations, there are decade-to-decade variations where things get warmer and cooler and warmer and cooler and so on. And since the 1950s, particularly since the 70s, there's been a strong increasing trend in global temperatures. We also have many other indicators of a warming world, which include things like land temperatures and sea surface temperatures, the temperatures in the lower part of the atmosphere, the troposphere, ocean heat content, which has increased quite a lot in the last few decades to great depths in the ocean. Water vapor has increased by about 4% globally, and that's what you would expect if you have a warming atmosphere and you have greater evapotranspiration. And there's been decrease in the Earth's snow-covered surfaces, glaciers, snow-covered sea ice, and so on. We also have folks who have done so-called fingerprint analyses. One of the fingerprint analyses is looking at, so when I say fingerprint analysis, I mean a fingerprint of what you would expect if there was human-caused global warming. So one of these analyses is looking at differences in the temperature between the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, and the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere. So for example, if this warming was due to changes in the sun's output, which happens over time, you would expect the entire column of the atmosphere to increase in temperature. In fact, what we observe is the lower atmosphere, the troposphere, is warming, and the stratosphere is cooling, which is what you would expect if you had gases that were trapping and retaining heat in the lower atmosphere. And then another line of evidence for human-caused global warming is modeling studies. You can do experiments with models that have a good track record of replicating the past temperature history of the Earth. And so I'm showing the results of one of these experiments where you force the model with naturally varying factors only, such as changes in the sun's output and the occasional volcanic eruption, which puts particles into the atmosphere that cools the atmosphere. And you get something like this blue trace. Then you can, and you hold the carbon dioxide levels constant at the beginning of the record. Then you rerun the experiment with the same natural factors, but now you're going to add in the human-caused increase in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. You get a trace like this red line. And then you compare both of those to the observed record, which is the black line, and you can see that since the 1950s, you couldn't explain that observed change without invoking the human-caused increase in greenhouse gases. So there are multiple lines of evidence for this effect and for human causation. And if you want to look into this in greater detail, I highly recommend looking at the draft National Climate Assessment at globalchange.gov, chapters on our changing climate and the science of climate change. And they also point out all of the references for the scientific literature behind some of the things that I described, and goes into more detail. Also, I can assure you that between now and the final release of the National Climate Assessment, these chapters and others will be revised. The assessment is undergoing 6 different revisions. I think we're through about 2/3 of those. The most recent one from federal agencies, but there was a public review back in the spring. The National Academies did a preliminary review. They're going to do another review, and there are 2 others, and I can't recall what those are. Anyway, it's a very highly reviewed. So, with that as background, I'll talk about some of the results from the assessment report. Starting off with some characteristics of the region. So when I refer to Southwest, I'm talking about the 6-state region. By the way, this is a map of the regions used in the National Climate Assessment. So it's the 6-state region stretching from California in the west to New Mexico and Colorado in the east. And as you all know, this is a very varied region in terms of many characteristics. It's also, we've seen rapid population growth in every state in the region. Our current population of 56 million people is projected by the U.S. Census Bureau to increase by 38 million people by the middle of the century to 94 million people. Our region produces more than half of the specialty fruits, nuts, and vegetables for the entire country. A lot of that's in California, but a fair amount, as you know, in Arizona. The ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach bring in half of the nation's shipping container traffic from the South American and Asia Pacific sectors. And 92.7% of the people in our region live in urban areas. Not necessarily these large cities, but any place that has a population density of 1,000 people or more per square mile. And if you think about it, think about the eastern United States as opposed to the Southwest. In the eastern United States, every 5 to 10 miles, there's something called a town. Whereas here, we've got a lot of federal land. It's probably more than half of the land in those 6 states is federal or tribal land. So our towns tend to be distributed more like 20 to 30 or 40 miles apart. And then I just want to mention that climate change is superimposed on top of a lot of other concerns for the region, including global or U.S. and regional economy, stresses of population change, degradation of infrastructure in our region. I don't know how many of you have ever taken a look at the American Society of Civil Engineers reports on this. They just did another national report card this year. Typically, the national grade for our infrastructure is somewhere between a D and a D minus. And then we live at a U.S. Mexico international border, and there are many issues associated with living nearby. So here are some of the observed climate and environmental changes. These maps show annual average maximum and minimum temperatures at long-term meteorological stations across the region. These stations are part of the U.S. Historical Climate Network. And if there are statistically significant trends, these are trends from 1901 to 2010 in temperature, then the circles will be filled with color, and if they're not statistically significant, then you'll see a plus sign. So what this shows is, by and large, a spatially coherent trend towards increasing temperatures across the region. In contrast, looking at precipitation, we have many fewer statistically significant trends and trends in different directions. So some are increasing, some are decreasing. And if we average across the entire region, you can see pretty clearly increases in annual maximum and minimum temperatures, again, with year-to-year and multi-decade variations. And with precipitation, no clear trend, dominated by the year-to-year and multi-decade variations. When you combine those increasing temperatures with precipitation that is dominated by variation, it affects the snowpack. And what we find is earlier snowmelt runoff the early time of snowmelt runoff in streams that are dominated by snowmelt, and an increased fraction of late winter and early spring precipitation falling as rain rather than snow at elevations lower than 8,000 feet. Some more recent research here at the University of Arizona looking at a much shorter time period and by and large snow stations that are at higher elevations didn't find that same fraction of winter precipitation falling as rain. What they did find was a longer snow-free season and less maximum snowpack in the region. So those effects on snow are one of the many factors contributing to our ongoing drought, which has had impacts on regional water supplies. I don't know if any of you ever take a look at what's going on in New Mexico, but Rio Grande is in a world of hurt. The longer snow-free season and increased temperatures also have an impact on the life cycles of plants and animals and insects. We've observed earlier arrivals of various migratory birds, differences in the breeding cycles of animals. There have been some changes in the elevations at which you find flowering plants. There's been very extensive work here in Catalina Mountains. And increases in the life cycles of insect pests like this pine bark bee. And beetles throughout their range again have a longer breeding season, which means that their populations can grow to greater numbers and they can have more synchronous attacks on trees that are suffering the effects of both increased temperatures and prolonged drought. So we've seen in our region, in fact, for a region stretching from northern Mexico to the Kenai Peninsula in Alaska, extensive conifer forest mortality as part of a 1-2 punch of drought stress on trees and then increased bark beetle activity to knock out the trees. Also, again, with the longer snow-free season and increased temperatures, we have a longer fire season and we also have drier fields. And that's led to the fires of record in our region all occurred during the last decade and a threefold increase in acres burned. Of course, there's also the contribution of century of fire suppression, which can certainly predispose the region to have greater fuel continuity. And then finally, locally we've observed 8 inches of sea level rise. This record is from the San Francisco gauge, and it shows roughly that same amount of sea level rise. One of the things that I wanted to point out is that sea level alone is a threat, but when you have storm surge on top of an elevated sea level, the fetch to which the water can reach inland is much greater. The erosive power of the storms is much greater. So typically we have, again, with variability in the sea level, during El Nino events in our region, we have much higher sea levels and a bigger chance for these kinds of destructive storm surges. So those are all things that we've observed, and now we look into the future, into the crystal ball, we have to use models. So climate models use mathematical equations to represent all of these processes. The circulation of the atmosphere at many levels in the atmosphere, the circulation of the ocean at many levels in the ocean, land surface processes and the interactions between land and the atmosphere, the ocean and the atmosphere, the output from the sun, the interaction between snow-covered surfaces and the atmosphere, and so on. So it's a very complicated system. These models are not statistical models. They use the primary equations for the fluid dynamics of the atmosphere and the ocean. So they're using the conservation of mass, conservation of momentum, the gas laws, and the fundamental physics of the Earth, basically. And we know, that all models are wrong, but many of them are useful. So what these models have shown with decades of research and effort on them is continuing improvement, finer spatial resolution in the models. And they've consistently shown a track record of being able to track continental scale and global scale temperatures. They're not quite as good at phenomena that are not spatially homogeneous as temperature variations, like precipitations. They show global patterns of precipitation well, but the fine scale details can be improved. So the great thing about models is that we can conduct experiments. We don't want to conduct experiments with our climate. So we can get plausible futures from looking at models. In the short term, the variability of climate from year to year, decade to decade timescales is the greatest uncertainty. But as we look out into the long-term future on timescales of 50 to 100 years in the future, the biggest factor forcing change in the climate system is the increase in greenhouse gases. The increase in greenhouse gases is a function of global population, the global economy, globally our ability to innovate technologies to reduce greenhouse gases, and globally the laws and policies and regulations and operational practices that make it easy or hard to adopt these technologies. So we know that we can't predict all of these things even 5 years into the future, let alone centuries in the future. So what we do is use plausible scenarios of different possible paths of greenhouse gas emissions based on consideration of these factors. This graph shows the observed change in carbon dioxide levels on the black line. We can observe some interesting things like a slight slowdown in the economy in the early 2000s. We can see the recent recession and recovery in the economy is expressed in our use of fossil fuels. And then we have these various colored lines which show the different paths of greenhouse gas emissions based on these scenarios of future emissions that are mentioned recently. So the path that I'm primarily going to concentrate on when I show you projections of future change is this one. It's the orange line, second one from the top. It's the continued high emissions path, the so-called A2 scenario. So, based on assumptions for continued high greenhouse gas emissions for these 3 30-year periods, annual average temperatures averaged over our 6-state region as compared to the annual average from 1971 to 2000 in degrees Fahrenheit are projected to increase 3 degrees in the near 30 years, 5 degrees by mid-century, and 8 degrees towards the last 3 decades of the century. With the greatest increases in the summer season, the blue dots here, and the fall season. You can see the spread among the 16 climate models that we use, and then the average of all the models of the dots. Annual average temperature isn't something that we feel in our bodies. Generally, we're pretty good at feeling hour to hour, day-to-day changes in temperatures. So I'll try to give you an idea of what those changes are like. The annual average temperature of Flagstaff is 46 degrees. Prescott, which is 1,700 feet lower, is 55 degrees to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Tucson's annual average temperature is 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Yuma, which is about 2,000 feet lower, is 7 degrees higher. So basically, these kinds of long-term temperature changes is kind of like lowering the elevation of the place by, let's say, 1,500 to 2,000 feet. With precipitation, you see that there's a lot of spatial variation. So the southern part of the region is projected to see somewhere between 5 to 15% decrease in precipitation depending on where you are. The northern part of the region is projected to see increases in precipitation. And again, I'll just reiterate that we have somewhat less faith in precipitation projections, but something that gives us confidence in these projections is the pattern of decreasing precipitation. And this is again an annual average over precipitation. So the pattern gives us some confidence because we expect that with a warmer atmosphere, atmospheric circulation will be invigorated, and the drying or subsiding heavy circulation from the tropics that sort of lands where the world's deserts are will intensify. So that's consistent with the drying out in the southern part of our region. We're at the edge of subtropical region of North America, and subtropics is where the deserts generally are. Whereas when you get into the mid-latitudes, as the Earth warms up and the temperature gradient between the equator and poles decreases, we expect the jet stream to migrate on average further north. We've already observed the jet stream migrating towards the pole by a few degrees, by more degrees in the southern hemisphere, where there's less landmass. And to become probably more sinuous because of the slackening temperature gradient. So those sorts of things give us some confidence in these projections. In terms of extreme precipitation, I just mentioned, by the way, that the most substantial effects here are in the winter and spring seasons. When it comes to extreme precipitation and summer precipitation, the jury is out on that. There is one study that's done here at the University of Arizona that indicates an increase in winter precipitation streams, but it's not a spatially coherent pattern, so you can take it with a grain of salt. And then there's a lot of activity looking at summer monsoon, but there's no consensus yet on those places. So those are projected climate changes, and now I'll talk about projected impacts. And the first is with water surface effects. So again, with increasing temperature and precipitation that's throughout the Colorado River Basin, for example, is varying its response with some substantial decreases and some substantial increases. We project less snow, less runoff, and lower soil moisture. With less snow and increasing temperatures, acres burned are projected to increase given the availability of fuels and emissions. Both of these studies look at the mid-century time frame. They're both based on statistical models. And for Arizona as a whole, 43% increase in acres burned. This other study, which is the National Academy study, restricted their analysis to mountainous areas and projected a fourfold increase in acres burned. One of the things that I think we need to prepare for is intersecting challenges. When we get either fires or these kind of mortality events destabilize the soils, and we end up, when we get the eventual thunderstorm or long-term winter rainfall, we get flood flows or intense flows, and those create gullies. The circle here is showing a person standing among the gullies in this gully in New Mexico. So those kinds of intersecting challenges are important to think about. In terms of agriculture, there are many different studies that look at changes in yield and so on, and they're really very place-specific. But one of the overall findings is that tree crops, which of course have a long rotation, long lifespan, tree crops need a certain number of chilling hours in the wintertime before their buds can settle and flowers can blossom. And one of the findings is that some of these tree crops will no longer be able to be grown in our region due to increase in temperatures and reduction in chill hours. Also, in terms of agriculture, ag uses the most water in any sector, roughly 80% of the water in our region. So one of the findings is that, and we know as well, that cities are expanding, and if you talk to any urban water manager, agriculture is seen as one of the next buckets of water that we could negotiate for water from agriculture. In terms of the energy sector, one of the things that our authors focused on, and it's a really detailed, oriented chapter, it looks at a lot of changes in fuel mix and so on. But one of the things they focused on was the vulnerability of our energy system to climate change. And some of the conclusions include, with changes in precipitation, increased evaporation, and less stream flow, we'll have less reliable hydropower. With increased extreme temperatures, and I didn't mention, but in terms of temperature, extreme high temperatures and heat waves are projected to increase. So that would create increased demand for electricity during the summertime and during the peak season. Increased temperatures also reduce the capacity of power lines to transmit power. Add to forest fires when they emit dust and particles of ash, which can collect on capacitors and reduce the capacity of power lines to transmit power. A few specific findings: changes in emission standards could result in a move from towards renewable energy and away from coal and petroleum. Higher temperatures could again spur demand, or they spur improvements in cooling efficiencies. An idea that you probably both systems. And changes in water supply could affect the availability of surface water and perhaps groundwater for extraction of energy such as oil shale in our region. In terms of urban areas, our authors focused a lot on the flow of material and goods throughout urban areas, so-called urban metabolism. They also focused on the threat of wildfires to a lot of our large cities, most of which back up against national forests and other wildlands, and also impacts to water supply. So one of the good news stories for our region is that all of our major cities have seen decreases in per capita water use, and in fact, even with an increasing population, per capita water use has mostly leveled off in our large cities, which is a testament to our ability to conserve water. On the other hand, the projected changes in water supply for our region. Remember earlier I mentioned less runoff, less snow, and less soil moisture. So the projections of changes in water supply, conservation alone will not be enough to counteract those projected changes. So we have historic records, this was the Colorado River, of water supply in the blue line and water demand in the red line. Over here on the left side is the dashed line. And this is based on work by the Bureau of Reclamation. And so we've seen the demand for water exceed the supply in recent decades. And the projections are for water demand to continue to increase, but supply to decrease. And our office project 10 to 15% decrease in Colorado River stream flow on average. So there'll be years will be a lot lower, or some cases higher, but that's on average. And I just wanted to mention sea level rise. Here there's a lot of uncertainty because of our limited knowledge of the behavior of glaciers, which we're learning can possibly very rapidly calve off huge amounts. So there are various estimates, again, the different scenarios of sea level rise, ranging from about 8 inches on the lower end to more than 6 feet on the high end. And the concern for us here in Arizona is that, again, there are storms riding on a higher sea level, as we saw with Hurricane Sandy and other instances in the past with the El Nino event, can have impacts on coastal highways, power plants, and infrastructure, including our ports and even our airports. And this is just using a naive model, not looking at storms, but just if sea level rise grows 16 inches in light blue, major portions of San Francisco and Oakland International Airports would be underwater. So you can imagine that these things would have an impact on the flow of goods and people into our region. There would be ripple effects across the country. In terms of public health, again, with projections of increased fire, we expect increased particulate matter, which will affect everybody's respiratory health, but in particular at-risk populations, which are typically talked about for very young and very old. Extreme heat is projected to increase in our cities. And you can add on top of that the urban heat island effect, which in Tucson is roughly 7/10 of a degree per decade. And that's projected to, again, create more illnesses and deaths. There have been in coastal cities, like San Diego, some major heat waves that have caused deaths just in the past decade, two such episodes have caused more than 100 deaths each time. And then there are projected changes in vector-borne diseases like mosquito-borne diseases and other infectious diseases. And our officers were very cautious in their remarks about this, and basically said that these will be very place-based in nature, depending on characteristics of the public health system and other characteristics of the land and vegetation around particular cities. One of the things that we know from recent research at the University of Arizona is that these warmer temperatures will have a longer breeding season for mosquitoes, which will increase our exposure to disease-carrying mosquitoes like the ones that carry West Nile virus, which is definitely a threat here, and dengue fever, which is a current threat in Mexico, and it's projected that it could possibly be a future threat in Arizona. All of these kinds of changes that I mentioned affect the U.S Mexico border region. The border region, both countries, by and large, get a lot less attention from the national capitals, including Washington, D.C. There tends to be lower socioeconomic status in border cities, with notable exceptions in San Diego. And there are also interesting issues with the border because there are different resource management practices, different ways of governance, and in some cases there can be breakdowns in communication of those people are working, and institutions work very hard at keeping up those communications. So I mention all these things to say that People in border regions generally, we would consider them to have higher exposure or greater sensitivity to projections. And that would be similar to tribal populations where they have less resources to deal with some of the projections. And just to mention, for some Arizona tribes, northern Arizona, like Navajo and Hopi, have been breeding or growing corn. It's a very important, culturally important crop in their region for thousands of years really. And during the recent drought, they've had a lot of trouble with continuing to grow corn. And the depletion of their groundwater, not from overpumping, but from lack of nutrients. With Navajo Nation, there's been this steady advance of sand dunes, which has overrun culturally important crops and even in some cases overrun housing areas for people live. And again, this is due to primarily desiccation, but also the land use. People, in some cases, raising cattle, those folks, hamper the migration. And then I just want to briefly mention the author of our climate extreme chapter mentioned something like 10 different possible tipping points. So these are sort of the known unknowns of futures. These are highly speculative. They bring sort of things. Two of them are this combination of tree mortality and stand replacing intense fires can have the effect of destabilizing ecosystems such that where there had previously been, let's say, ponderous conifers, in the future it might not come back as a ponderous conifers because of the degree of disturbance. We also know that these things like changes in the jet stream and as the move ice in the Arctic region, that could create some changes in atmospheric circulation that we currently can't predict. And then they know also that looking at the paleoclimate record of our regions have been subject in the past to abrupt and persistent climate change. So in terms of choices for the future, the authors of that chapter in our assessment went to great lengths to point out several examples, and I'll just mention one, where when we had big challenges in the past, we would come up with big solutions. And one of them is in terms of water management. And our system of dams and diversions, massive plumbing system that gives, allows 56 million people to live here, plus water for agriculture and water in at least in our perennial trees for ecosystems. And whether you think that's done more harm than good or vice versa, it's a massive achievement. So again, in the past, when there's been big challenges, we have been able to come up with big solutions. There's a lot of planning activity going on in our region in the absence of a national climate plan until this year. Major actors have been NGOs, cities, and states. California has been a major leader, as has Colorado. And we've had individual cities, including Tucson, Flagstaff, and others that have developed greenhouse gas reduction plans and are developing plans that adapt to what we think are inevitable changes. We also have many options for reducing greenhouse gases. And I'll explain this complicated looking graph here. This is y-axis shows cost. This is the zero line here. So above the zero line are things that will cost us money. Below the zero line are things that save us money. And then the x-axis is potential greenhouse gas savings. So, for example, on the left, in this quadrant, these are things that save us money but will only save us little CO2.
And over on this side, things that cost us that save allows us to do. So for example, if we light commercial buildings with LED lighting, we'll save a little CO2, but it will save us money. If we move a little farther over, we can still save money, not as much, but we can save a lot more CO2 with solar residential water use. And if we move further to the right and have distributed solar photovoltaic power, we save a lot more CO2 than it will cost. The authors of our energy chapter made this point, and this was quote, if drastic reductions in greenhouse gases are required, the study found that it's more practical and less costly to reduce emissions in the electricity generated sector, and then electrify as much of other sectors, for example, transportation, as possible. And they even they cite work by Lawrence Looking in National Lab to lay out how changing the fuel mix away from coal and towards more renewable energy. And I'm just showing a slide here for Arizona, where their recommendations is based on various kinds of models and studies. It would include increased natural gas and increased solar, about the same fraction of nuclear, and a mix of hydro and wind power. Some of the other states, the fraction of wind power is much greater. But anyway, they're not out of plan for the future. In terms of water management strategies, these are things that are already being used, and given the degree to which they're used in the future will depend upon the cost and the need, but all of our Southwest states already use water conservation, low-hanging fruit for the future. California and Colorado are contemplating putting in new dams. California currently uses desalination of ocean water. Texas currently uses desalination of brackish groundwater. That is pretty well known for retirement of lawns. Arizona is well known for groundwater banking, and other states are adopting that technology. And all cities are looking to a greater fraction of water being supplied by the treatment and use of effluent, including direct potable use, so treating effluent for use in our drinking water supply. California has developed regulations for that now, and over the course of next year, Arizona will be developing regulations for direct potable use. We've taken steps to do things. There's been some modest investments in our region in alternative energy. There are various kinds of ecosystem restoration projects, some of which increasingly are taking into account projected climate changes to increase the resilience, for example, riparian areas for forests. And water managers and ecosystem managers are increasingly using this planning strategy of using multiple different scenarios, trying to come up with strategies that are robust to many different kinds of futures, given the uncertainty in the climate models and the uncertainty in projection of greenhouse gases, and also the degree of risk of various kinds of factors that there is. So these are all good news, but of course, this activity is small in proportion to the projected changes. My final comment is that we need to plan for multiple contingencies. The kinds of impacts will not happen in isolation. And so to avoid future disaster, we really have to think about, the unthinkable or the known unknowns, and try to figure out how to plan for contingencies. So as Jerry mentioned, you can go to this website, SOC2RR.arizona.edu. You can download the whole report, any individual chapter, 2-page fact sheets, any of the graphs and maps. And also, We've conducted some webinars, and you can listen to the podcast of those webinars from those. So thank you for your attention and your indulgence. I spoke for a long time, and I look forward to hearing you.